Hello, I'm Kyle, and welcome to Bedtime Verses with Kyle. Just a little poetry to help you get ready for bed. Tonight we're continuing with The Induction by Thomas Sackville, and where we left off was he was being escorted by the goddess of sorrow, and they're going straight to hell. Here we go. And hideous hole, all vast without in shape, of endless depth, o'erwhelmed with ragged stone, with ugly mouth and grisly jaws doth gape, and to our sight confounds itself in one. Here entered we, and yeeting forth anon, an horrible loathly lake we might discern, as black as pitch, that clepped is Avern, a deadly gulf where naught but rubbish grows, with foul black swelth in thickened lumps that lies, which up in the air such stinking vapours throws, that over there may fly no fowl, but dies, choked with the pestilent savours that arise. Hither we come, whenceforth we still did pace, in dreadful fear, amid the dreadful place. And first within the porch and jaws of hell sat deep remorse of conscience, all besprent with tears, and to herself oft would she tell her wretchedness, and cursing never stent to sob and sigh, but ever thus lament, with thoughtful care, as she that all in vain would wear and waste continually in pain. Her eyes unsteadfast, rolling here and there, whirled on each place, as place that vengeance brought. So was her mind continually in fear, tossed and tormented with the tedious thought of those detested crimes which she had wrought, with dreadful cheer and looks thrown to the sky, wishing for death, and yet she could not die. Next saw we Dread, all trembling how he shook, with foot uncertain proffered here and there, benumbed of speech, and with a ghastly look, searched every place, all pale and dead for fear, his cap borne up with staring of his hair, stoined and amazed at his own shade for dread, and fearing greater dangers than was need. And next within the entry of this lake sat fell Revenge, gnashing her teeth for ire, devising means how she may vengeance take, never in rest till she have her desire, but frets within so far forth with the fire of reeking flames, that now determines she to die by death, or venged by death to be. When fell Revenge with bloody foul pretense had showed herself as next in order set, with trembling limbs we softly parted thence, till in our eyes another sight we met, when from my heart a sigh forthwith I fet, ruing, alas, upon the woeful plight of Misery that next appeared in sight. His face was lean, and some deal pined away, and eke his hands consumed to the bone. But what his body was I cannot say, for on his carcass raiment he had none, save clouts and patches, pieced one by one, with staff in hand, and scrip on shoulders cast, his chief defence against the winter's blast. His food for most was wild fruits of the tree, unless sometimes some crumbs fell to his share, which in his wallet long, God wot, kept he, as on the which full daintily would he fare. His drink the running stream, his cup the bare, of his palm closed, his bed the hard cold ground. To this poor life was Misery y-bound, whose wretched state, when we had well beheld, with tender ruth on him and on his fears, in thoughtful cares forth then our pace we held, and by another shape appears, of greedy care, still brushing up the briers, his knuckles gnawed, his flesh deep dented in, with tawed hands and hardy tanned skin. The morrow grey no sooner hath begun to spread his light, even peeping in our eyes, when he is up and to his work he run. But let the night's black misty mantles rise, and with foul dark never so much disguise the fair bright day, yet ceaseth he no while, but hath his candles to prolong his toil. By him lay heavy Sleep, the cousin of Death, flat on the ground, and still as any stone, a very corpse, save yielding forth a breath. Small keep took he whom Fortune frowned on, or whom she lifted up into the throne of high renown, but as a living death, so dead alive, of life he drew the breath, the body's rest, the quiet of the heart, the travail's ease, the still night's fear was he, and of our life and earth the better part. Reaver of sight, and yet in whom we see things oft that tide, and oft that never be, without respect esteeming equally King Croesus' pomp and Eris' poverty. And next in order, sad old age we found, his beard all hoar, his eyes hollow and blind, with drooping tears still pouring on the ground, as on the place where nature him assigned, to rest, when that the sisters had untwined his vital thread, and ended with their knife the fleeting course of fast declining life. There heard we him with broken and hollow plaint rue with himself his end approaching fast, and all for naught his wretched mind torment with sweet remembrance of his pleasures past, and fresh delights of lusty youthful waste, recounting which, how would he sob and shriek, and to be young again of Jove beseek? But, and the cruel fates so fixed be, that time for past cannot return again, this one request of Jove yet prayed he, that in such withered plight and wretched pain, as eld, accompanied with his loathsome train, had brought on him, all were it woe and grief, he might a while yet linger forth his life, and not so soon descend into the pit, where death, when he the mortal corpse hath slain, with reckless hand in grave doth cover it, thereafter never to enjoy again the gladsome light, but in the ground he lain, in the depth of darkness, waste and wear to naught, as he had ne'er into the world been brought. But who had seen him sobbing, how he stood unto himself, and how he would bemoan his youth forepast, as though it wrought him good to talk of youth, all were his youth forgone. He would have mused and marvelled much whereon this wretched age should life desire so fain, and knows full well life doth but length his pain. Crook-backed he was, tooth-shaken and blear-eyed, went on 3 feet and sometime crept on 4, with old lame bones that rattled by his side, his scalp all piled, and he with eld forlore, his withered fist still knocking at death's door, fumbling and drivelling as he draws his breath, for brief, the shape and messenger of death. And fast by him pale Malady was placed, sore sick in bed, her colour all forgone, bereft of stomach, savour, and of taste. Nay, could she brook no meat but broths alone, her breath corrupt, her keepers every one, abhorring her, her sickness past recure, detesting physic and all physic's cure. But oh, the doleful sight that then we see, returned our look, and on the other side, a grisly shape of famine might we see, with greedy looks and gaping mouth that cried, and roared for meat, as she should there have died, her body thin and bare as any bone, whereto was left naught but the case alone, and that, alas, was gnawed on everywhere, all full of holes, that I ne mought refrain from tears to see how she her arms could tear, and with her teeth gnash on the bones in vain, when all for naught she fain would so sustain her starving corpse, that rather seemed a shade than any substance of a creature made. Great was her force, whom stone wall could not stay, her tearing nails snatching at all she saw, with gaping jaws that by no means he may be satisfied from hunger of her maw, but eats herself as she that hath no law, gnawing, alas, her carcass all in vain, where you may count each sinew, bone, and vein. On her, while thus we firmly fixed our eyes, that bled for ruth of such a dreary sight, lo, suddenly she shrieked in so huge wise, as made hell gates to shiver with the might, where with a dart we saw how it did light right on her breast, and therewith pale death enthralling it, to reave her of her breath. And by, a dumb dead corpse we saw, heavy and cold, the shape of death aright, that daunts all earthly creatures to his law, against whose force in vain it is to fight, ne peers, ne princes, no, nor mortal wight, no towns, ne realms, cities, ne strongest tower, but all perforce must yield unto his power. And that's all for today, but I'll be back tomorrow. Thanks again for joining me for Bedtime Verses with Kyle. You can follow me here, or subscribe to my website and my YouTube, and there'll be new readings every night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Good night, sleep tight, and don't let the Grim Reaper bite.